My daughter left her 5-year-old autistic son at my door and never came back. That was 11 years ago. I raised Ethan myself. Everyone said he'd never succeed, too different, too difficult. They were wrong. By 16, he'd built software worth $3.2 million. Then the news covered his story. 2 weeks later, my doorbell rang. Rachel, my daughter, standing there with a lawyer and documents claiming she'd been involved the whole time. Custody papers, financial records, visit logs, all lies. But they looked real. Our lawyer reviewed them and said, without proof they're forged, we might lose. I panicked. Ethan didn't. He leaned over and whispered, "Let her talk." I stared at him. We were about to lose everything, and he wanted her to keep lying, but he just sat there, calm, watching, and I had no idea what he was about to do. My name is Vivian. I am 68 years old, and this is my story. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. Rachel showed up on a Friday in November 2010 with Ethan and one backpack. "Just for the weekend, Mom," she said at my front door. "I need a break, please." Ethan stood beside her, 5 years old, staring at the porch floor. He rocked back and forth, heel to toe. His hands covered his ears, even though we weren't making noise. "Rachel, I'll call you Sunday." She was already turning away, walking fast toward her car. She didn't hug Ethan, didn't kiss him goodbye, just left. I watched her taillights disappear down the street. Ethan kept rocking. I'd taught elementary school for 35 years. I'd had a few autistic students mainstreamed into my class over the decades, always with aides and specialists handling the hard parts. But standing there with my grandson, I realized I knew almost nothing about actually living with it. "Hey, Ethan," I said softly. "Want to come inside?" He didn't look at me, didn't move, just rocked. I picked up his backpack. It was light, too light for a weekend stay. I opened the door wider and waited. After a minute, Ethan walked past me into the house, still covering his ears. The refrigerator hummed. He flinched. The heater clicked on. He pressed his hands tighter to his head. I closed the door as quietly as I could. He was already in the living room, crouched in the corner by the bookshelf. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "Nothing." "Thirsty?" He rocked faster. I went to the kitchen, poured water in a yellow plastic cup I kept for when he visited. Those visits were rare, maybe twice a year, always short. I brought the cup to him and set it on the floor, an arm's length away. He stopped rocking, looked at the cup, then went back to rocking. That first night was worse. I made chicken nuggets and fries for dinner because Rachel once told me that's what he ate. Ethan took one look at the plate and turned away. I tried pasta. No. I tried a sandwich. He pushed it across the table. "What do you want to eat?" I asked. He hummed a low sound in his throat and stared at the wall. I gave him crackers. He ate 3. Bedtime was a disaster. I tried to help him brush his teeth, and he screamed, not crying, screaming like I was hurting him. I stepped back and he stopped, but he was shaking. "Okay," I said. "Okay, you can skip it tonight." I put him in the guest room, tucked the blanket around him the way I thought kids liked. He threw it off. I tried again. He screamed. I left the blanket at the foot of the bed and backed out of the room. He didn't sleep. I could hear him humming all night, that same low sound over and over. I didn't sleep either. Saturday morning, I called Rachel. No answer. Left a message. "Rachel, honey, call me back. I need to know what Ethan eats, what his routines are." She didn't call. I called again Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. Nothing. 1 week became 2. I took Ethan to the pediatrician. The doctor confirmed what I already suspected. "He's autistic. Mrs. Cooper, has anyone talked to you about getting him evaluated?" His mother was supposed to handle that. The doctor nodded slowly. "Well, you're handling it now." I enrolled him in therapy, speech, occupational, behavioral. I learned he needed the same breakfast every single day. Scrambled eggs, toast cut, corner to corner, nothing touching on the plate. I learned the route to therapy had to be exactly the same, or he'd scream in the car. I learned not to touch him unless he initiated it. I got good at watching instead of doing. 2 weeks after Ethan arrived, I found him in the living room at dawn. He was on the floor with a bin of toy cars I'd bought him, lining them up in a perfect row, but it wasn't random. He'd arranged them by color, but in a way I couldn't understand at first. I sat on the couch and watched. Red car, then one that was slightly more orange, then one more orange than the last, then yellow-green, on and on. The gradient was so subtle I had to squint to see the differences. He'd organized them by shade perfectly. "That's amazing, Ethan," I said. He didn't look at me, but he kept arranging. December came. Rachel still hadn't called. I tried a different approach with Ethan. I stopped trying to get him to look at me. I stopped pushing him to talk. I just made sure everything was the same every single day. Same breakfast, same time, same shows on TV, same bedtime routine that he'd finally tolerated, which was just me saying goodnight from the doorway. He calmed down. Not happy, but less frantic. He'd sit in the living room with me while I read. He'd eat meals without pushing the plate away. On Christmas Eve, I made sugar cookies. Ethan didn't help, but he sat at the table and watched me cut shapes. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and butter. The phone rang. I grabbed it, hoping. "Rachel." "Mom." Her voice was flat, tired. "Rachel, thank God. When are you coming to get him? He needs you. I can't do this anymore, Mom." I stopped moving. "What?" "He's yours." I tried. I really tried. But I can't. Her voice cracked. "I just can't." "Rachel, wait." The line went dead. I called back. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I stood there in the kitchen with the phone in my hand, the cookies burning in the oven, smoke starting to curl up. I turned off the oven, pulled out the tray. The cookies were black. I sat down on the floor, just sat there with my back against the cabinet. Ethan appeared in the doorway. He looked at me for a long moment, longer than he'd ever looked at me before. Then he walked to the counter, picked up the yellow cup I'd given him that first day, and brought it to me. He set it on the floor beside me. I looked at the cup, looked at him. He went back to the living room. I cried sitting there on the kitchen floor with a burnt cookie sheet and a yellow plastic cup. The years after that blurred together. I kept everything exactly the same for Ethan. Same breakfast every morning, eggs and toast, same route everywhere we went, same bedtime, same routine, same everything. When I kept it consistent, he was okay. Not happy maybe, but okay. When he turned 6, he became obsessed with a set of magnetic letters I'd bought him. He'd arrange them on the refrigerator for hours, not words, patterns, groups, sequences I couldn't understand. Then he started drawing symbols in little notebooks from the dollar store circles, lines, tick marks, tracking something only he understood. At therapy, I asked about it. "He makes these marks everywhere. Should I be worried?" The therapist, a patient woman named Dr. Lin, shook her head. "He's tracking his world. It helps him feel secure. Let him do it." So I did. He filled notebook after notebook with his symbols and marks. By the time he turned 7, the symbols became letters. Then short words, egg, toast, school, home, simple things, but written in neat block letters. At 8, he was writing full sentences, times, what he ate, where we went, what happened. He learned to make eye contact sometimes, little flickers. He learned to tolerate the grocery store if we went at the same time every week. He learned that I wasn't going to leave, wasn't going to change things without warning. One morning in spring, when he was 8, I was making breakfast eggs, toast, same as always. Ethan sat at the table with his notebook, writing something. "Why did Mom leave?" I nearly dropped the spatula. I turned around. Ethan was looking at his notebook, not at me, but he'd spoken 3 years of mostly silence, then single words, and now this. A full sentence, a question. I sat down across from him. "She said she couldn't handle it," He nodded once, wrote something in his notebook, went back to staring at the page. I got up, finished making breakfast, put his plate in front of him. Then, I went to the bathroom and cried where he couldn't hear me. He'd spoken. He'd asked the question I didn't know how to answer, but I told him the truth. That's all I could do. The truth. And eggs and toast every morning and the same yellow cup. That's what I had to give him. It would have to be enough. A year after Ethan first spoke to me, the school called with a problem. It was September 2014. Ethan was 9, starting 4th grade. I thought we'd moved past the hardest parts. He was talking in full sentences now, eating in the cafeteria without meltdowns, even raising his hand in class sometimes. Progress. Then Principal Andrews wanted to move him. "Mrs. Cooper, we need to discuss Ethan's placement," he said over the phone. "New teacher this year, Mrs. Brennan," who'd seemed kind at orientation. I'd been hopeful. "What's the courting problem?" I asked. "Ethan would be better served in our special needs classroom. The other students are moving at a different pace." I gripped the phone. "Ethan keeps up with the work. It's not about academics, it's about behavior. He doesn't participate in group activities. He won't make eye contact during circle time. Yesterday he covered his ears during music class because it's loud. He has sensory issues. Mrs. Cooper, we have a program designed for children like Ethan. It would be less stressful for everyone. Less stressful for the teacher," he meant. "I want an IEP meeting," I said. "We can arrange that. But this week, silence. Then I'll have my secretary call you." I spent 3 days preparing, printed every report card, every therapy progress note, every piece of documentation I'd kept in folders. Ethan's reading was above grade level. His math was 2 years ahead. His handwriting was careful and neat, every letter perfectly formed. The problem wasn't that he couldn't learn. The problem was that he learned differently. The meeting was on a Friday afternoon, conference room at the school, 2 bright fluorescent lights humming. Principal Andrews sat at the head of the table. Mrs. Brennan next to him, school psychologist, special education coordinator, all of them with folders. I had one folder, but it was thick. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Cooper," Principal Andrews said. "We want what's best for Ethan." "So do I." Mrs. Brennan spoke first. Soft voice, sympathetic smile. "Ethan is a sweet boy, but he struggles socially. He doesn't interact with peers. During group work, he sits alone. He refuses to participate." "Does he do the work?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yes, but education isn't just about worksheets. It's about learning to work with others, to communicate. He's autistic. Communication is harder for him, but he's trying." The special education coordinator, a woman named Miss Pierce, leaned forward. "Our resource room offers a smaller setting, fewer distractions. Students who understand his challenges. Students who can't keep up academically," I said. "That's not Ethan." Principal Andrews used that principal voice, the one I recognized from my own decades in classrooms, reasonable, patient, condescending. "We understand you want Ethan in a mainstream classroom, but we have to consider the needs of all students." "You're telling me Ethan is disruptive," I said. "Not disruptive exactly." "Then what's the problem?" Miss Pierce opened her folder. "Ethan's social skills assessment shows significant delays. His IQ testing was inconclusive. He refused to finish several sections because they were timed, and that made him anxious. His therapist documented that. Which brings us back to our point," Principal Andrews said. "Ethan needs support we can't provide in a regular classroom." I opened my folder, pulled out the first document. "This is Ethan's reading comprehension test from last month, 97%, 7th grade level. Next document, math assessment 100%, 5th grade material." I kept pulling papers, stacked them in front of Principal Andrews. "These are therapy notes showing his progress in speech, in emotional regulation, in sensory tolerance. He's come further in 4 years than anyone predicted, not because he's in a special room with low expectations, because people believed he could do more." Mrs. Brennan looked uncomfortable. "It's not about expectations." "Yes, it is. You want him somewhere else because he makes you uncomfortable because he doesn't perform normal the way you want normal to look. The room went quiet. Principal Andrews cleared his throat. Mrs. Cooper, I understand you're frustrated. Under IDEA, Ethan has the right to the least restrictive environment. That means mainstream classroom with appropriate supports, not segregation, because he's different. We're not suggesting segregation, Miss Pierce said quickly. Just a more appropriate setting. Then provide the supports in his current classroom. Noise-canceling headphones for music, extra time for transitions, a quiet space if he gets overwhelmed. That's accommodation, not removal. They looked at each other. Principal Andrews sighed. We'll draft an IEP with those accommodations, he said finally. But if Ethan continues to struggle, he won't. I didn't actually know that, but I knew giving up on him wasn't the answer. That evening, I spread all the meeting notes across the kitchen table, started organizing them into a 3-ring binder, color-coded tabs for medical, educational, therapy, legal. My hands knew this work from years in classrooms. Ethan came in from the living room. He'd been watching his show, the same episode he watched every Friday. His yellow cup sat on the counter where he always left it. He stood, watching me work. "What are you doing?" he asked. His speech had grown stronger over the year, more fluid. "Making sure the school can't forget what you can do." He moved closer, looked at the papers. "Can I help?" I glanced at him. "Sure." We worked together for an hour. I showed him how I was organizing everything. He studied my system, then pointed to the therapy tab. These should be sorted by date, then by type. Speech separate from occupational, separate from behavioral. I looked at where he was pointing. He was right. That made more sense. "Show me," I said. He rearranged the entire section in 10 minutes, created a system I wouldn't have thought of logical and clean and perfect. I watched him work, his hands moving fast, completely focused. He understood organization on a level I'd never reach. Pattern and structure and order, it came naturally to him the way breathing came to other people. "That's really good, Ethan," I said when he finished. He nodded. Didn't smile, but I could tell he was pleased. The next year, when Ethan turned 10, his speech therapist suggested a tablet for communication support, something to type on when speaking felt too hard. I saved up and bought him one for his birthday. He had it figured out in a day. Within a week, he downloaded a scanning app, started photographing every page of his notebooks, creating digital copies. I watched him work, methodical and focused, preserving everything he'd ever written. "Why are you doing that?" I asked. "So I don't lose it," he said, not looking up from the screen. At therapy group sessions for parents, the other mothers would ask me questions during coffee time. How did I get Ethan to cooperate? What was my secret? How did I handle the meltdowns? "I don't handle him," I said. "I listen to him." One woman, Linda, whose son was 7 and nonverbal, shook her head. "But how do you stay so patient?" I thought about that. I guess I stopped trying to make him be someone else. I just try to understand who he is. She looked at me like I'd said something profound, but it wasn't profound. It was just the only thing that worked. Ethan started noticing patterns everywhere. That year, we'd be driving and he'd say, "The traffic light on 4th Street is mistimed. It stays red 45 seconds longer than the others." I had no idea if that was true. At the grocery store, he'd look at the receipt and point out a pricing error. The apples were marked wrong 3 cents higher than the shelf tag. He was right every time. Once at a parent-teacher conference that fall, Principal Andrews smiled at me while explaining Ethan's progress, but his eyes stayed flat, cold. "In the car," Ethan said, "he doesn't like me." "What?" "No, honey, he was being nice." His face moved wrong. The smile didn't match. I glanced at Ethan. He was staring out the window, expression blank. "What do you mean?" When people really smile, the muscles around their eyes contract. His didn't. He was pretending. I drove in silence. Ethan was 10 years old and he could read faces better than I could. By the time he turned 11 and started 5th grade, I thought we'd found our rhythm. Then Mrs. Hang called me at work one afternoon. "Mrs. Cooper, Ethan disrupted class today." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "I was teaching long division. Ethan stood up and corrected me in front of everyone." "Was he right?" Pause. "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point. Was he right?" "Yes. But then, he was helping." "Mrs. Cooper, he embarrassed me. He needs to understand there's a time and place. He's 11, he sees a mistake, he corrects it. That's how his brain works." Another parent conference, another stack of paperwork. This time, they wanted to label him oppositional defiant. "I brought 6 months of therapy notes, doctor. Lynn's assessments showing Ethan wasn't defiant. He was direct, factual. He didn't understand social hierarchies that said adults were always right even when they were wrong. He's not being disrespectful," I explained to the school psychologist. "He's being honest. There's a difference." They agreed to drop it, barely. That night, Ethan asked me a question while we ate dinner. "Why do they want me to be different?" I set down my fork. "What do you mean?" "The teachers, the other kids, everyone wants me to act like I'm not me." I didn't have a good answer. "Not really, because they're scared of people who see more than they do," I said finally. He thought about that, nodded once, went back to eating. A few weeks later, he asked if I had his birth certificate. "Why do you need that?" I asked. "I want to see it. I found it in my file cabinet." He studied it for a long time, then asked for his school enrollment papers, his social security card, anything with his name on it. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Is this about your mom? I just want to see everything. Make sure it's all there." I assumed he was processing what had happened, trying to understand why Rachel left, what his life looked like on paper. It made sense for a kid who organized the world in categories and files. I helped him scan everything into his tablet. Birth records, medical history, every legal document I had in the filing cabinet. He saved them all carefully, backed them up, created folders with labels I didn't quite understand. "What are you building?" I asked once. "A system," he said, "so nothing gets lost." I kissed the top of his head. "Okay, buddy, whatever helps." I thought he was coping with his past. I had no idea he was preparing for his future. That future started taking shape the summer Ethan turned 12. He'd been scanning documents for months by then, organizing everything into his tablet with a focus I'd learned not to interrupt. But in June 2017, he discovered something new. Coding. I found him at the kitchen table one afternoon with my old laptop open, staring at a screen full of text that looked like gibberish to me, lines of words and symbols and brackets. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Learning Python." He didn't look up. "What's Python?" "A programming language. I'm following a tutorial." I leaned over his shoulder. The screen showed instructions about variables and functions and loops. None of it made sense to me. "Is this for school?" "No, I just want to learn it." I left him alone. That's what worked with Ethan. Let him follow what interested him. He spent the entire summer on that laptop. While other kids were at baseball camp or the pool, Ethan was coding. I'd bring him lunch, and he'd eat without looking away from the screen. His yellow cup sat beside the laptop, half full of water he'd forget to drink. By August, he was showing me things he'd made, little programs that did tasks I didn't understand. "This one sorts files by date," he explained. "This one finds duplicates. This one checks if a file has been modified." "That's really impressive, Ethan." He nodded, kept typing. In September, I used the last of my savings to buy him a better computer. A real one, not my hand-me-down laptop that took 5 minutes to start up. He'd earned it. The man at the electronics store asked what Ethan would use it for. "Programming." "How old are you?" 12. The man smiled. "That's a good age to start. You'll go far." Ethan didn't respond, just waited for me to pay. At home, he set up the new computer in his room. I made him promise to still come out for meals and to sleep at reasonable hours. He agreed, but I could tell his mind was already back in that world of code I couldn't enter. One evening in October, he called me to his room. I want to show you something. I sat on the edge of his bed. He pulled up a program on his screen. What is it? Watch. He opened a document, a simple text file with a few sentences. Then he ran his program. Numbers appeared on the screen, long strings of them. That's the document signature, like a fingerprint. Okay, I said, not really understanding. He opened the document again, changed one word, saved it, ran the program again. Different numbers appeared. See? The signature changed. That means the document was altered. So, you can tell if someone edits something. Yes. And when and how many times? He looked at me, actually made eye contact for a moment. So things stay true. I thought about all those school meetings, all those times administrators had said one thing and then claimed later they'd said something else. All the times I'd wished I had proof. That's brilliant, Ethan. He turned back to his screen. It's just pattern recognition. Digital instead of physical. Just pattern recognition, as if that wasn't everything. The next year, when he was 13, the big project expanded. I want to digitize all your binders, he said one morning at breakfast. The school meeting notes. All of it. I looked at him over my coffee. That's a lot of scanning. We already did the legal stuff. I know, but I want everything in the system. What system? I want the one I'm building, so nothing gets lost or changed. I thought about it. Those binders held years of fights, years of advocacy, years of proof that Ethan wasn't what people assumed he was. Okay, I said, but you're doing the scanning. My back can't handle that many hours hunched over. We spent weeks on it. I'd pull out binders, and Ethan would scan page after page IEP meeting notes from 2014, therapy assessments from 2012, report cards, progress notes, incident reports, every piece of paper that told Ethan's story. He didn't just scan them. He did something to each file on his computer, adding layers of information I couldn't see. What are you adding? I asked. Once. Timestamps, verification codes, hash values. He paused. Each document connects to the ones before and after it, like a chain. If someone tries to change one link, the whole chain breaks. Why would someone change them? He looked at me. Why did Principal Andrews try to move me when I was 9? Fair point. So, this protects the truth, I said. Yes. I watched him work. This kid who'd been nonverbal 7 years ago, who'd screamed at the sound of the vacuum cleaner, who couldn't look anyone in the eye now, he was building something I could barely comprehend. Something powerful. I'm proud of you, I said. He nodded once, kept scanning. Our relationship had changed by then. We didn't need a lot of words. I'd say something. He'd nod. He'd show me something on his computer. I'd tell him it was good. We had dinner together every night, same time, same seats. His yellow cup always to the right of his plate. Comfortable. That's what it was. Comfortable silence with someone who understood you didn't need to fill every quiet moment with noise. He turned 14 inches November 2018. One afternoon, he asked if I'd kept anything from when he first came to live with me. Like what? Receipts, calendars, bank statements, anything from 2010 or 2011? I frowned. Why would you want that? I just want to see it. I led him to the garage, showed him the boxes I'd never thrown away, because I'm not a throwaway kind of person. Old tax records, utility bills, bank statements going back a decade, calendars where I'd written appointments and errands in cramped handwriting. You kept all this? He asked. I taught elementary school. We keep everything. He started going through the boxes, pulled out my 2010 calendar, opened it to November, ran his finger down the dates. Why do you need this? I asked. I need to know what really happened, not what people say happened, what actually happened. I sat down on an unearthed, overturned crate. This is about your mom. He didn't answer right away, just kept looking at the calendar at my handwriting, marking the day Rachel brought him. The days after when I'd written, try chicken nuggets and call Rachel and doctor appointment. I need to know the timeline, he said finally. When things happened. What was real? My chest tightened. He was processing it, the abandonment, the years without her, the questions he'd never gotten answers to. "We can scan all of it," I said. "Whatever you need." We brought the boxes inside, spent the next month scanning grocery receipts, bank statements showing I'd never gotten money from Rachel, phone bills proving she'd never called, calendars documenting our routine, our life, every ordinary day that proved she'd been gone. I thought he was building a timeline of his childhood, understanding his past through documentation and proof. "Why grocery receipts?" I asked once, watching him. "Scan a faded slip from 2011. They have dates, they show where we were, what we bought. They're evidence." Evidence of what? Of what happened, of what was real. I didn't push. If he needed this to heal, I'd help him. He started staying up later that year. I'd go to bed at 10 and hear the click of his keyboard through the wall. At midnight, I'd get up, make him a sandwich, or cut up an apple, leave it on his desk without saying anything. "Thanks," he'd murmur, not looking away from the screen. Some nights, I'd wake at 2 or 3, 0 inches the morning, and see light under his door. "Ethan, you need to sleep," I'd say. "Almost done." He was never almost done. One night in February, I brought him tea at 0 inches the morning. His room was cold. 3 monitors now, all showing different screens of code and documents and data. "What are you making?" I asked. He paused, turned to look at me. "Something that will help people know what's real and what's fake. What actually happened versus what someone claims happened. That's really important to you." "Yes." "Because of your mom." He thought about that. "Because people lie, and sometimes you need proof." I kissed the top of his head. His hair needed cutting. "Don't stay up all night," I said. "I won't." He did anyway. I'd find him asleep at his desk some mornings, head on his arms, monitors still glowing. I'd put a blanket over him and make breakfast. He'd wake up an hour later and come to the kitchen like nothing had happened. I was proud of him, proud of his dedication, his intelligence, his drive to create something meaningful. I just didn't understand what it was really for. I thought he was healing from the past. I didn't know he was building armor for the future. He'd ask me sometimes to test his programs, click this button, tell him if the colors looked right, if the words made sense. I didn't understand what any of it did, but I could tell him if it looked. It finished. "Does it work?" I'd ask. "Yes." "Then what are you still working on?" "Making it better, always more accurate. Always one more test, one more verification, one more way to prove what was real and what wasn't." I thought it was just a project, something impressive he'd put on college applications someday. I had no idea what he was really building. What he was building turned out to be something people would pay millions for. Ethan was 15 when he finished it spring 2020, middle of the pandemic. The world locked down, and everyone suddenly living online. Ethan barely noticed the difference. He'd been living in his room with his computers for years already. "I want to show you something," he said one afternoon in May. I followed him to his room, 3 monitors all showing different screens. He pulled up a program with a clean, simple interface, nothing fancy, just boxes and buttons and text. "This is it," he said, "the verification system." "What does it do?" He clicked through screens, showing me features I only half understood. "It analyzes documents, checks if they've been altered, when they were created, if the signatures match other known samples. It catches forgeries." I watched the program run through a sample document. Numbers appeared, graphs, analysis results. So if someone fakes a document, this catches it. Yes, the metadata, the digital fingerprints, the patterns it sees what people can't. "That's incredible, Ethan." He nodded. "I'm going to sell it." "To who?" "Security companies, fraud prevention. Anyone who needs to verify documents are real." He said it so matter-of-factly, like it was obvious. My 5-year-old son was going to sell software to companies. "Do you know how to do that?" I asked. "I've been researching." Of course he had. He started reaching out to companies that month, sent emails with professional language. I helped him polish, though his direct way of writing was clearer than most business communication I'd seen. The first sale came in June. A small security firm bought a license for $20,000. I stared at the number on the screen when Ethan showed me. 20,000. It's less than it should be, he said, but it's a proof of concept. Now I have a client. He was right. Once word got out that his system worked, other companies wanted demos. Ethan took conference calls in his room, that same calm voice he used with me, explaining technical concepts without dumbing them down. I'd listen from the hallway. Sometimes he'd say things like, "The algorithm compares hash values across multiple verification layers, and somehow the business people on the other end understood him or pretended to." He turned 16 inches November 2020. By January 2021, he had 6 more clients and enough money in his account to pay for college twice over. Then, the big offers started coming. Tech companies wanted exclusive rights. Corporate fraud prevention firms wanted to license it for their entire operations. The numbers jumped from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions. "I need help," Ethan said in February. "I don't know how to evaluate these contracts." I found a business lawyer through a colleague, James Nakamura, specialized in intellectual property and software licensing. He met with us on a Saturday morning at our kitchen table, spread out 3 different contract offers. "These are all substantial," he said, looking at Ethan. "You built something valuable." Ethan nodded. "Which one is best?" James walked him through the options: licensing deals that would pay over time, acquisition offers that would buy the software outright. Ethan listened, asked specific questions about terms and conditions and rights. "I want to sell it completely," Ethan said finally. "I don't want to manage licensing or support or updates. Just sell it and be done." James looked. "I'm surprised." "You're sure? Licensing could pay more long-term." "There's a non-compete clause in the acquisition," Ethan said. "If I sell it, I can't make competing verification software for 5 years. "That's standard," James said. "Does that bother you?" "No. I'm done with this kind of software." He sold it in March for $3.2 million. $3.2 million. I couldn't process that number. I'd worked 35 years as a teacher and made maybe half that total before taxes. The local news heard about it somehow. Wanted to do a story about the local autistic teen who'd created revolutionary security software. I didn't want them in our house. Didn't want them turning Ethan into inspiration material, but he said yes. The reporter, a young woman named Kate, came on a Thursday afternoon. She set up in our living room, asked if she could film Ethan at his computer. "Can you explain what your software does?" she asked. "It verifies document authenticity through pattern recognition and metadata analysis," Ethan said, looking at the camera the way he'd look at anyone. "Direct. It catches forgeries that people miss." "What made you want to create this?" I tensed. But Ethan answered simply, "I wanted to know what was real. People lie. Documents don't, if you know how to read them correctly." Kate smiled. "That's very insightful. Do you have plans for what you'll do with the money?" "Not yet." She tried a few more questions, but Ethan's answers were short, factual, not the emotional human interest story she wanted. After 20 minutes, she thanked us and left. The segment aired on Friday Evening News. Local teen creates revolutionary security software. They used maybe 2 minutes of the interview, added dramatic music, showed Ethan at his computer looking focused and brilliant. I watched it with him. "How do you feel?" I asked when it ended. "Fine." But I noticed something in the days after. He wasn't celebrating, wasn't excited about the money or the attention or what came next. He was just waiting, watching. I'd catch him staring out the window sometimes, or sitting at the kitchen table with his yellow cup, not drinking, just holding it. "You okay?" I'd asked. "Yeah." But he wasn't. Something had shifted, some tension I couldn't name. 2 weeks after the news story aired, the doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. Ethan was in his room. I opened the door, and there they were. A woman in a gray suit, expensive looking, hair perfect. A man beside her in a dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase. The woman smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, Mom." My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. Rachel. She looked older, 11 years older. Lines around her mouth, tension in her jaw, but it was her. "Ethan," she said, looking past me into the house. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My body had forgotten how. "I'm Stephen Walsh," the man said. "Mrs. Cooper's attorney. We'd like to speak with you about Ethan's situation." "His situation?" I managed. Rachel's smile got tighter. "Can we come in? This is important." I should have said no. Should have closed the door. But I was frozen. Ethan appeared behind me in the hallway. He looked at Rachel. His face was completely blank. No surprise, no emotion, nothing. He just watched her the way he'd watched traffic patterns or pricing errors, analytical, calculating. "Come in," he said. My legs moved without my permission. I stepped back. They came into my house, Rachel and her lawyer, and I felt sick. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Ethan and I ate breakfast every morning, where we'd organize school meeting notes and scan documents and planned his future. Now Rachel sat there, hands folded, while her lawyer opened his briefcase. "Mrs. Cooper, we're here to discuss custody and financial guardianship," he said. Professional, smooth, practiced. "My client, Rachel Cooper, has maintained parental rights to Ethan and wishes to resume active custody." "Custody," I said. "He's 16. "Precisely," Walsh said. "Still a minor, and my client never formally terminated parental rights. She's been co-parenting from a distance, maintaining contact through appropriate channels." "That's a lie," I said. My voice shook. "She hasn't called in 11 years. Rachel spoke then, soft voice, sad eyes that looked fake. "Mom, I know you've done a wonderful job raising Ethan, but he needs his mother now, especially with the money and the attention. He needs guidance." "He has guidance." Walsh pulled out papers, documents with official-looking seals and signatures. "These show Miss Cooper maintained legal parental rights. She's documented her financial support and communication over the years. She's entitled to custody and given Ethan's minor status, management of his financial assets until he reaches majority." I looked at the rucket, the long citizen action or precedent papers. They looked real, professional. My heart was hammering. "Those are fake," I said, but I had no proof. "They're properly notarized and filed," Walsh said calmly. "Unless you can prove otherwise." I looked at Ethan. He was watching Rachel, his face still blank, but I could see something in his eyes, something I couldn't read. "Ethan," I said quietly, "what do we do?" He looked at me for 1 second, then back at Rachel. "We should get a lawyer," he said. Getting a lawyer turned out to be easier than using one. I found Linda Reyes through a referral family law attorney with 20 years of experience. She met with us 3 days after Rachel showed up, came to our house because I couldn't face going to an office. I brought every binder I had, years of school records, therapy notes, medical appointments, every piece of paper proving I'd raised Ethan. My hands shook the entire time I carried them to the kitchen table. Ethan sat quietly in the chair beside me, watching, always watching. Linda spread Rachel's documents across the table, the ones Walsh had presented. She studied them for over an hour, reading every page, checking signatures, examining the stamps. Finally, she looked up. Her face told me everything before she spoke. "These look legitimate," she said carefully. "Very professionally done." "But they're fake," I said. "She's lying. She hasn't seen him in 11 years. "I believe you. But do you have concrete proof these documents are forged?" I pulled out my binders. "I have everything, every school meeting, every doctor visit, every therapy session." Linda looked through them, nodded slowly. "This is excellent documentation. It proves you've been the primary caregiver. But Mrs. Cooper, without hard evidence that her documents are fake, a judge might rule in her favor." "Why?" "Because she never legally terminated parental rights. There's no court record of custody transfer. Schools and doctors accepted you informally." She paused. Did you ever file for formal guardianship? The room went cold. I didn't think I needed to. She abandoned him. I know. But legally, without documentation of that abandonment, without her signing away rights, she's still his parent on paper. Linda's voice was gentle but firm. Her lawyer will argue that an informal arrangement doesn't override parental rights. I couldn't breathe. So she can just take him? She's not trying to take physical custody. He's 16. Courts rarely force teenagers to move. She's after financial guardianship control of his assets until he's 18. $3.2 million. That's what this was about. Can we fight it? Yes, but I need you to understand. Her case looks strong. She has documentation, a compelling narrative about maintaining involvement from a distance. Unless we can prove those documents are fraudulent, we'll lose. Linda didn't disagree. I looked at Ethan. He sat perfectly, still, hands folded on the table, face blank. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan, I said quietly, do you understand what's happening? Yes. Are you scared? He thought about that. No. How could he not be scared? I was terrified. Linda explained the next steps: depositions, discovery, court dates. It would take weeks, maybe months. The whole time Rachel's claim would hang over us. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and broke down. We're going to lose you, I said through tears. After everything, after 11 years, we're going to lose. Ethan stood up, didn't say anything, just walked to his room and closed the door. I wanted him to tell me it would be okay, to show some emotion, some fear, something. But he just left me there. I cried alone at the table for an hour. The depositions started 2 weeks later. Rachel went first. She sat in the conference room at her lawyer's office, perfectly composed, hairstyled, makeup subtle, wearing a soft, gray sweater that made her look maternal. Walsh asked her questions. She answered smoothly. Can you describe your involvement in Ethan's life over the past 11 years? I've tried to maintain consistent contact, she said. Her voice was steady, warm, apologetic. I visited monthly when possible, sent financial support through money orders, called regularly to check on his progress. Why didn't you take physical custody? I felt it was better for Ethan to have stability with my mother while I dealt with personal challenges. But I never stopped being his mother. I never stopped caring. She provided date-specific months when she claimed to have visited exact dollar amounts she supposedly sent. December 2012, $300. April 2014, $500. On and on, a detailed financial record of support that never happened. I sat there listening, nails digging into my palms. Mrs. Cooper, why are you seeking custody arrangements now? Walsh asked. Because Ethan has significant assets that need proper management, and because he's approaching adulthood. I want to be present for this crucial transition, to guide him, to make up for lost time. She looked at me when she said it, sad eyes, regretful smile. I wanted to scream, wanted to call her a liar in front of everyone. But Linda had warned me, stay calm, don't react. Let her tell her story. After Rachel finished, Linda took me aside. Her testimony is detailed, consistent. That's very convincing to judges. It's all lies. I know. But can you prove it? I couldn't. Ethan's deposition was 3 days later. Walsh asked him questions about his childhood, about memories of his mother, about her involvement. Do you remember your mother visiting you? Walsh asked. I don't recall specific visits. Do you remember phone calls from her? I'd have to check my records. What about financial support? Did you know she was sending money? I don't remember receiving money from her. Walsh looked pleased. He thought Ethan's memory was poor, that it supported Rachel's narrative that she'd been involved. That Ethan, being autistic, simply didn't remember clearly. He had no idea. Linda asked Ethan questions too. Can you describe your relationship with your grandmother? She takes care of me. Cooks meals, helps with school. She's always been there. Do you want to live with her? Yes. Do you want your mother to have control of your finances? No. Short answers. Direct. True. but they felt weak against Rachel's detailed lies. After the deposition, Linda drove us home. "He did well," she said. "But Mrs. Cooper, I have to be honest. Without evidence proving Rachel's documents are forged, this is going to be difficult." "How difficult?" "We might lose." That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Ethan being taken away, Rachel controlling his money, him turning 18 and being free, but those 2 years feeling like forever. At 3:00 the morning, I got up, saw a light under Ethan's door. I opened it quietly. He was at his computer, 3 monitors glowing. Lines of code scrolled across one screen. Documents and data filled the others. "Ethan, it's 3:00 the morning." He didn't turn around. "I know. You need to sleep. Court is tomorrow." "I'm almost done." "Done with what?" He kept typing. "My records." I moved closer, saw spreadsheets with dates, files with names. I recognized my bank statements, calendar entries, phone records. "Ethan, I don't know what to do," I said. My voice broke. "I don't know how to fight this." He stopped typing. Didn't turn around. "Just tell the truth tomorrow," he said quietly. "That's all you have to do." The truth isn't enough. She has documents. She has proof. Fake proof, but proof. "Tell the truth," he repeated. I wanted to shake him, to make him understand how serious this was. But he just sat there, calm, focused, like losing me didn't matter. I went back to bed. Didn't sleep, just lay there in the dark, terrified. Ethan stayed at his computer all night. I heard the keyboard clicking until dawn. I had no idea what he was doing. I just knew I was about to lose him, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Morning came, whether I wanted it to or not. I got up at 6, made breakfast. Neither of us would eat. Ethan came out of his room at 7, showered, dressed in the button-down shirt we'd bought for court. He looked older than 16, tired, but calm. "You ready?" I asked. "Yes." We drove to the courthouse in silence. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Ethan stared out the window. Linda met us on the steps. "Remember, stay calm. Let me do the talking." "Ethan, answer questions directly, but don't volunteer information." Ethan nodded. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood paneling, fluorescent, lights, that smell of old paper and floor polish. Judge Harrison sat at the bench, a woman in her 52s with sharp eyes and gray hair pulled back. Rachel sat at the front table with Walsh. She dressed carefully, soft colors, minimal jewelry, hair loose. She looked like a concerned mother. We sat at our table, Linda on one side of me, Ethan on the other. "All rise," the bailiff said. The hearing began. Walsh stood, presented his case smoothly. Rachel Cooper, devoted mother, maintained consistent involvement despite personal challenges. Documentary evidence of parental rights never terminated, financial support provided, regular contact maintained. He laid out the documents on the evidence table. The custody papers, the co-parenting agreements, the financial records, all fake, all convincing. Judge Harrison reviewed them carefully, took her time. Then she looked at Rachel. "Mrs. Cooper, can you describe your involvement in Ethan's life over the past 11 years? Rachel's voice was steady, warm. "I tried to stay connected as much as possible, Your Honor. I visited when I could. I sent money to help with his care. I called regularly to check on his progress." "Why didn't you maintain physical custody?" "I felt it was better for Ethan to have stability with my mother while I addressed personal issues, but I never abandoned him. I never stopped being his mother." She said it with such conviction, such sincerity. I wanted to scream. The judge asked more questions. Rachel answered all of them. December 2013, she visited for Ethan's birthday. April 2015, she sent $500 for therapy costs. May 2017, she called to discuss his progress in school. Lies, all lies, but detailed, consistent lies. Judge Harrison looked thoughtful. "Thank you, Mrs. Cooper." Then it was Linda's turn. She presented my binders, years of school meetings, therapy records, medical appointments, every piece of evidence that I'd raised Ethan alone. But as she went through them, I could see the judge's expression. Sympathy, but doubt. "Miss Reyes," Judge Harrison said, "these records show Mrs. Cooper has been the primary caregiver. But I don't see formal guardianship documentation, no court order transferring custody, no legal termination of parental rights." My chest tightened. "Your Honor," Linda said carefully, "Rachel Cooper abandoned Ethan when he was 5 years old. My client has documentation of that abandonment. But without Miss Rachel Cooper's signature on custody termination papers, without legal documentation, her parental rights remain intact." The judge looked at me, not unkindly. "Mrs. Cooper, I understand you've done excellent work raising your grandson. But legally, without proof that his mother abandoned her parental rights, her claim has standing." The room tilted. Rachel looked at Walsh, smiled slightly. She thought she'd won. My heart was pounding so hard I couldn't breathe. I looked at Ethan, beside me, desperate for something, anything. His face was completely blank, unreadable. I leaned close, whispered, "She's lying. We have to stop her." He turned his head slightly, whispered back, "Let her talk." "What?" "Let her say everything she wants to say." I didn't understand. We were losing, and he wanted Rachel to keep talking. Judge Harrison looked at Ethan. "Young man, do you wish to speak?" Long pause. Ethan sat perfectly still. Then he stood. "Yes, Your Honor, I have evidence." My heart stopped. What evidence? I'd given Linda everything I had. "Approach," Judge Harrison said. Ethan picked up a bag I hadn't noticed him carrying, walked to the witness stand, calm, steady, like he'd done this 100 times. He pulled out a laptop. "May I connect this to the display, Your Honor?" Judge Harrison looked surprised. "What are you presenting?" "Verification of document authenticity and timeline evidence." He spoke clearly, directly the way he always did. "I built a system that proves whether documents are real or forged." Walsh stood immediately. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We weren't informed of this evidence." "Your client presented fraudulent documents 6 weeks ago," Ethan said, looking at Walsh. "I'm presenting analysis of those documents now." Judge Harrison studied Ethan. "Proceed, but this better be relevant." Ethan connected his laptop. The courtroom display lit up. He pulled up Rachel's custody documents first, the ones Walsh had presented. They appeared on the screen official-looking, with stamps and signatures. "These documents claim to be from 2011 through 2020, Ethan said. "But the digital metadata shows they were created 6 weeks ago, right after the news story about my sale aired." He clicked through screens showing creation dates, file properties, editing history, all time-stamped. "All recent." Walsh objected. "Metadata can be manipulated." "Not in this case," Ethan said calmly. "The signature verification shows additional discrepancies." He pulled up my copy of his birth certificate, Rachel's signature, from 2005, then ran a program that analyzed the signatures on the custody documents. Numbers appeared, comparisons, statistical analysis. The pressure patterns don't match. The letter formation is inconsistent. The spacing and slant are different. These signatures were forged. Judge Harrison leaned forward. "How do you know this?" "I built a verification system. It analyzes documents for authenticity. It's what I sold last month." "You're 16, the judge said. "Yes." She blinked. "Continue." Ethan pulled up a new screen, a timeline. "These are my records. I've been documenting my life since I was 9 years old." He showed spreadsheets, scanned documents, photographs, all time-stamped, all verified. "Mrs. Cooper claims she visited in December 2013. Here's my grandmother's calendar from that month showing our schedule. Here are photos from that week with timestamps. Here's my therapy session notes from December 9th. Therapist confirmed no mother present. Here's the school attendance record showing I was present every day that month." He clicked through more screens. December 2013. Rachel wasn't there. Mrs. Cooper claims she sent money orders. Here are 7 years of my grandmother's complete bank records. No deposits from Rachel Cooper. Not $1. Bank statements appeared on screen, every transaction highlighted, every source documented, nothing from Rachel. Mrs. Cooper claims she called regularly. Here are phone company records from 2010 to present. 0 calls from her number after December 24, 2010. Phone records, years of them. Rachel's number nowhere. April 2015. She claims she sent $500 for therapy. Here's the bank statement showing no such deposit. Here's my grandmother's calendar showing she paid out of pocket. Here's the receipt. Every claim Rachel had made, Ethan demolished with proof. Walsh stood again. Your Honor, this evidence wasn't disclosed in discovery because you presented fraudulent documents 6 weeks ago, Ethan said. I built the verification system to analyze them. That's impossible, Walsh said. You couldn't build something like this in 6 weeks. I didn't, Ethan said. I've been building it for 7 years. I just finished analyzing these specific documents 6 weeks ago. Judge Harrison stared at him. You've been documenting your life for 7 years? Yes, Your Honor. Every calendar entry my grandmother made, every receipt she kept, every therapy session, every school meeting, every bank transaction. Everything is time-stamped, cross-referenced, and verified. The system makes it impossible to alter retroactively. He pulled up more screens, showed the judge how it worked, how each document connected to others, how the verification codes proved nothing had been changed. So when Mrs. Cooper says she visited monthly, sent money, called regularly, I can prove she didn't because I have proof of what actually happened, what was real. The courtroom was silent. Judge Harrison looked at Rachel. Mrs. Cooper, can you explain these discrepancies? Rachel's face had gone pale. She looked at Walsh. The metadata could be wrong, she said. Her voice shook. The dates might be. I did visit. I did send money. When exactly? The judge asked. December 2013, I remember. Do you have proof? Receipts? Photos? Anything? Rachel stammered. I didn't keep records. I was there. I know I was there. But you have detailed financial records of money orders sent. Yes, those show. She was falling apart, contradicting herself. The confident mother from 20 minutes ago was gone. Mrs. Cooper, Judge Harrison said coldly, did you or did you not falsify custody documents? No, my lawyer said. Walsh looked sick. Judge Harrison turned to Ethan. This verification system, it's legitimate? Yes, Your Honor. I sold it last month to Anderson Security for $3.2 million. They verified its accuracy before purchase. The judge's eyebrows rose. Then she looked at the evidence again, at the timeline, at the proof that Rachel had been gone for 11 years. I've seen enough, she said. She ruled from the bench, no recess, no deliberation. Rachel Cooper, I find your testimony not credible and your documentation fraudulent. Full custody and guardianship is awarded to Vivian Cooper. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for investigation of perjury and fraud. Rachel made a sound like choking. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck. It was over. Outside the courthouse, standing in the afternoon sun, I finally understood. You knew, I said. You've been protecting us all along. Ethan nodded once, didn't smile, just nodded. 6 months later, things looked different. Ethan couldn't work in data security anymore. The non-compete clause from selling his verification system was clear, so he started a new company, software testing and quality assurance. I'm hiring people like me, he said over breakfast one morning. Autistic people. We see patterns others miss. His first hire was Stephen. I recognized the name immediately. Stephen had been my student 20 years ago. I'd fought the school board for him in 4th grade. They said he'd never hold a job. Now he was Ethan's lead quality tester. Then Marcus. Then Lily. More of my former students, kids people had given up on. I visited Ethan's office one afternoon. Small space, 6 desks, everyone wearing headphones, quiet, focused. Stephen saw me, took off his headphones. Mrs. Cooper, You told the principal I wasn't broken, just different. His voice cracked. Ethan says the same thing. I couldn't speak, just nodded. Rachel got 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service at an autism resource center. 3 months into her sentence, I was dropping off donated supplies and saw her on the floor reading to nonverbal children. She looked up, saw me. We both froze. She looked exhausted, humbled, nothing like the woman who'd shown up with a lawyer. The center director told me, not knowing who I was, that volunteer comes in extra hours. Says she's learning what she should have learned years ago. I didn't speak to Rachel, just watched for a moment, then left. Some things don't need words. On a Tuesday evening, a few weeks later, I brought dinner to Ethan's apartment like I always did. His yellow cup sat on the counter, chipped, but still his favorite. We ate at his small table, quiet, comfortable. I started clearing plates. Ethan put his phone down. Vivian. I turned around. He was looking at his hands. I know what you gave up for me. I sat back down, waited. Your friends stopped calling. You stopped going places. I heard you on the phone once, turning down a trip because you couldn't leave me. Ethan, you could have sent me away like she did. School suggested it. You didn't. My throat was tight. You're my grandson. I know. He looked up at me. But you chose it every day, even when I couldn't say thank you. Silence, just the hum of his refrigerator. It mattered, he said quietly. I reached across the table, put my hand near his, not touching, but close. You were worth every single day, I said. He nodded once. I know that now. We sat there a moment longer. Then I got up, finished the dishes while he opened his laptop. Same routine, same comfortable silence, but something important had been said. I kissed the top of his head on my way out. He didn't flinch. See you Tuesday, I said. Tuesday, he confirmed. I drove home through streets I'd driven 1,000 times before, same route, same turns. The way Ethan liked things. The way I'd learned to like things too. My phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Ethan. Thank you. Just those 2 words. I smiled the whole way home. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. If you were in my shoes, could you forgive your own daughter for abandoning your grandson? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.